Three, two, one, go. Hi guys, and welcome to the 5th episode of Chai and Chill. I'm your host Lakshmi Trivedi.
And I'm your host Pranjali Kulkarni.
And today we have...
Ayaan Moledina.
And Ayaan, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am a junior in high school, and I went to school with a lot of these wonderful folks. I went to Spiceville Elementary in Canyon Vista, and now I lead a nonprofit that focuses on getting young people involved in policymaking, and we do a lot of work around public education, mental health, suicide prevention, and a bunch of different issues that affect young people. And so students will come to us about issues that are affecting them in their schools and their communities, and our job is to craft policy solutions at the local, state, and federal level that address those challenges.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the legislation you've written in the past?
Yeah, and I'll preface this by saying that all of the legislation that my organization has written is all based on personal experiences of young people, myself, my colleagues, other people who work for our organization. So it's not just coming out of the woodwork. These are solutions that we know could have helped us. And so when I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with clinical depression and obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's why I knew I wanted to get into some sort of advocacy to help students like me who were also struggling. And so we have several bills, one that will give funds to cities to make sure that they have paramedics respond to mental health calls rather than police. Because a lot of times what we know right now is that if someone calls 911 and says, okay, either I or my family member or my friend is in a moment of crisis, they're having a really hard time, I'm scared that they're going to hurt themselves, what's going to end up happening is they're going to send police. Mm-hmm. And that's just not productive because police are not healthcare professionals. They don't know how to properly handle these things. And so we want to make sure that health professionals, paramedics, are the ones there to support. And, I've spoken with police chiefs from across the country who support this as well because they agree that it just puts more of a burden on them, right? They don't want this. So that's one of the bills to make sure that paramedics have that funding and that training to be able to handle that. And there are other bills like making sure that every school district across the country has an anti-bullying protocol in place because we know that there is a big connection between bullying and mental health, and it's not something that's talked about a lot. We're also trying to focus a lot more on loneliness and social isolation, which I think is something very prominent in the South Asian community that I don't think we talk about a lot, right? Yeah. There are so many young people who feel like they're alone, who feel like they don't have anybody to talk to, who feel like they have no one to go to for help. And that is the loneliness epidemic that we are facing. The Surgeon General of the United States under President Biden, also a South Asian, Dr. Vivek Murthy, he actually released a Surgeon General's advisory on the loneliness epidemic, is what he called it, among young people. And it outlined a lot of different things that people in government, people in communities need to do to address the loneliness epidemic. So there was a bill in Congress that we supported that would give money to local community centers to fund programs like Meals on Wheels and other programs that alleviate loneliness among senior citizens. So we're trying to do something similar for young people as well. So that's another priority of ours. We also have a bill that makes sure that 988 and the contact information for the 988 Lifeline is put on the back of student IDs all across the country. So that's something that we have here in Texas. I'm sure you all know. Yeah. And so we supported that. We helped get that done. But many other states across the country don't have that. And so we want to make sure that people know about that resource because it's so incredible, and you can be on the phone with someone in a matter of 60 seconds to help you in a moment of crisis. But most young people across the country don't know about it. So all of these different things are based on lived experiences. The police bill that I mentioned was I wrote that bill after a couple months after I had a similar experience where I was in a moment of crisis and I was put in the back of a police car, and I was threatened with handcuffs, I was threatened with force, and you probably have never been in the back of a police car, and I don't encourage you to, but it's not fun, right? And so and I hadn't done anything wrong, I wasn't violent, but I realized I wasn't the only one that had been put in that position, and I wanted to make sure that young people across the country didn't also have to be put in that position.
I think 988 like suicide line on the back of the IDs and just like the bill in general, I think, is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this HR 5725?
Yes.
Yes.
What? How did you know
I
that?
have a whole like
Yes.
bibliography.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But
Stalking me, I see.
Personally, I think that bill would have really helped me because last summer I got diagnosed with clinical depression, anxiety, and like trichotillomania. And the thing is, with getting diagnosed, especially like when you're South Asian, a lot of times our parents don't want to like really accept, at least for my parents, they didn't really want to accept the fact that, you know, I actually had all this. And I remember, and do you know what trichotillomania is?
I'm not familiar, I'm going to be honest.
Oh, okay, so it's like part of OCD, and it's like where you pull your hair obsessively. And it's just like, I've lost so much hair over the past like 2-3 years of my life because I just can't stop pulling my hair. And my parents, they tell me like, oh, you know, only witches pull their hair out. Like, you are not, like, why are you doing all this? And my mom, for example, a few days ago, she was trying to like buy a new shampoo for me because she was like, you've lost so much hair, your hair's like getting weak now and you don't have any left, so what are the problems in your hair? Is it like, is the quality bad? Is it like, is your hair not shiny enough?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I was like, Mom, it's literally trichotillomania. Like, it's in my like diagnosis report that it's trichotillomania. And she was like, don't come to me with that BS. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think just in general, like, as South Asians, well, I can't generalize all South Asians, but in my experience, mental health has been really villainized, and I felt like in a way a villain. Like, I felt selfish for having these things that I'm dealing with and not being able to share it with anyone. And that's kind of why I decided to start Chai & Chill, because I realized that this is not just a problem for me, it's a universal problem amongst all South Asians.
Yeah.
And South Asian teens.
I think that's really true, and I think we've talked about it like a lot in our episodes, and it's kind of what our whole like ideology is revolved around, is students not being able to seek the help they need, because they're like constantly like nurtured in an environment where parents kind of immediately just like shut down any idea of having a mental health problem. And I think what Lakshmi said is really true. Like, kids feel selfish about having the problem. They feel like they're attaching a burden to their parents, and they want to be like this perfect, like golden brown kid for their parents. And when they're not that, they completely like, they're in like a full shutdown mode, and that's why they feel like they can't communicate to their parents, and that's why they go through so many problems. I actually had a question for you, Ayaan. You were talking about like being South Asian in general and like how that kind of ties into mental health. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think like the idea is behind like South Asians having this really like idea of being high achieving and like this minority of being super like high achieving? Like, how do you think that acts as a barrier to students actually wanting to get the mental health support?
Yeah, right. It's the model minority. It's that we are expected to fit inside this box that we can't, right? I mean, we are living in 2026. There is no box. The box is shattered. The box is gone. The box has been recycled. Okay, there is no there is no person that is going to be identical to another person, right? And my favorite quote of all time is, why fit in when you were born to stand out, right? I mean, I just don't believe in fitting in with the crowd or trying to be like, you know, a normal kid or a normal student. And because I think we're all carrying our own baggage, right? I mean, looking at you or looking at me or looking at any of us, we all look happy, we all look great. No one could ever tell, right, like that, what we have going on inside. And that's why I really don't understand when people message me on social media and are like, oh my gosh, it looks like you're living the life, this, that, and the other. And I really want to tell people, like, it's not, right? Like, it can seem like the best thing in the world, like everything is great, but everybody has their struggles. And that's why I think vulnerability is strength, right? Like, you just shared your story. That is not easy, right? I mean, there's a camera, there's other people in the room. That is not something easy to share. And I share my story a lot, and every time it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier because I still cringe. I'm like, I don't know who's going to see it. I was like, what if someone in my family, what if someone in my mosque, what if one of my friends sees this? But then I know that they need to. They need to, because maybe it'll help understand. One specific event sticks out to me, and that was when I went and spoke at a school board conference a couple months ago, and it was a crowd of 400 people, and I just spoke about my experiences. I didn't have a script. I kind of just spoke from the heart, and so many people came up to me crying after, and they said, we didn't understand this before, but because of you, we're going to go get our child, our grandson, help. And I'm going to figure out a way to help them. And that meant everything to me, right? Because I just want people to have that little push to understand, to be able to get their family members help. And that's happened other places as well. When I go testify before the state legislature, and reporters will follow me out, not to ask me questions for the news, but to tell me, we got bullied the hell out of when we were in high school, and they're in tears. And it's because this has touched everybody. Mental health is something that everybody has experienced, that someone they know has experienced. So going back to your original question, I know I went off on a tangent. I just get passionate. But I think it's very hard for South Asians and South Asian parents in particular to understand what to do. I think it's part of what Lakshmi said, right? That it's hard to accept, but it's also hard to understand, right? Those are two different things. You can accept, okay, my child has clinical depression, my child has OCD, but acceptance is different than understanding. And I think, how do you get understanding, right? I was diagnosed 7 years ago, and I still don't think my family fully understands. And that's just the way that these things go, right? I mean, I have been to the hospital, I've been through medication, I've been through therapy and all of that, and they've seen it all, but they still don't understand it all. And it's because they come from and despite how highly educated they are, they come from a background where this was just not a thing, right? I mean, it was a thing, but there was no mental health, right? It was just like, okay, he's crazy, she's crazy,
Yeah.
it's ye pagal ho gaya, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was no concept of like this is a health issue, right? Like, this is something that can be dealt with medically. And so I think that is something that we can only get over with education. And like I said, it's been so many years and they're still learning. So the learning never stops. Despite all that they've seen me go through, sometimes they'll still be like, why did he just do that? Right? Like, why is he saying that? And I'll be like, and I can't say it at the time because my mind's not in the right place, but later on I'll be like, that was depression, right? That was OCD. Like that's why this happened. So it's hard to differentiate, especially between what is this person's personality, who is this person, and what is their mental health doing to them.
That's so true.
Because there's always going to be things that happen that you do that you're like, that's just not me, right? Like, I would never do something like that. But it's almost like it's out of your hands. It just happens. And so that's when you really need to get help, to go to therapy, to get medicine. And I think medication is so interesting because so many South Asian parents don't want to get their kids medication because they're like, I don't know what this does, right? Like, you don't need it. Like, it just... we've all heard these lines, right? And so how do you get over that? How do you tell them that, like, these are scientifically backed? Like, Zoloft, which is the antidepressant that has been around and used for decades, right? It is so scientifically backed. It is proven to work. So sometimes, a lot of these South Asian parents just need to see some hard data and some facts. And sometimes we just need to push them to take a chance, right? We're as scared as they are, right? We haven't been through it, neither have they. We're all flying by the seat of our pants. We all have to try and learn and do our best. I will also say I mentioned this before, but like I want to reiterate, like, vulnerability is strength. And I think if everybody shares their story, right, then, you know, maybe we're talking here, maybe a South Asian parent will hear it and you know, get help for their child, right? Like, there's, even if it helps one person, that's why we have to continue having these conversations. It can't just be a one-off. We have to continually have that. And a lot of times, there's also times where, you know, like, especially among South Asian men, where it's like, they have no one to talk to. You go to your brother, you go to your friend, and they're like, oh, just man up, bro. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's, oh my gosh. I have been told, right, like suicide is like so stupid because you're choosing to do, like, it's just the stupidest things, right? And they don't understand that, like, this, it's not as black and white as it may seem. So it's hard for them as well, and these are young people as well, so it's even hard. It's not just parents, right? It's hard for young people as well because they have grown up with that mindset, and that's something we need to change by having conversations. And it's also the lack of communication, because a lot of times then when these kids are struggling, they don't feel like they have anywhere to go for help. They don't feel like that they can talk to anybody. And that's where the 988 on the back of student IDs comes in handy as well, because it at least gives some sort of message that, hey, like, you can talk about this. Like, you can ask for help. There is somewhere you can go. As part of my job, I talk to, unfortunately, so many parents who have lost their kids to suicide. And every time they tell me, like, it's, my child didn't have anywhere to go for help. They didn't feel like they could talk about it. So that is the number one thing, right? And that goes back to hopelessness and loneliness. We can't let any child or any person ever feel like they don't have anywhere to go for help. The last thing that I'll mention is how faith communities relate to this as well. So there was an 18-year-old in my mosque who died by suicide a couple months ago. And there was so much stigma around it that no one wanted to talk about it. No one wanted to say what it was. No one wanted to take any action when I went to the religious leaders in the mosque and I said, this was a long time coming. We knew this was going to happen, and I told you 5 months ago that this would happen if we didn't start having these conversations. They still refused to do anything. So especially in moments like that, it's really hard to keep going, right? Because you're like, how, you know, someone just died, how could we still not want to keep going and try to change things? But those are the moments where you have to remind yourself why we're having these conversations. And maybe you go to another leader, or maybe you forget those leaders altogether and you just go around having conversations with the community members. And that's what I've started doing. You have to find different angles to take it, but you can't give up. Sometimes you're going to hit a wall and you're going to have to turn right, turn left, and find another door. And it's hard, right? Because you're like, damn it, this should be so clear cut, right? Like, how could you possibly not understand this? And you're not going to get the answer to that. Why do they don't understand? Sometimes it's stigma. They're scared to talk about it. Sometimes they're not educated. Sometimes they just don't want to. It's too much for them to think about, right? Oh my gosh, a child just died. I can't even think about that. So there's a lot of different things that play into it. But that also means that there's a lot of different things that can be done to address those things.
I think when you said, like, faith communities and how there's a lot of mental health stigma around that. So I personally come from, like, the Hindu community. And in Hinduism, there's a scripture called the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And so in the Bhagavad Gita, there are, like, two main characters, right? Like, Arjuna and Krishna. And, like, so Arjuna is kind of in this state of depression as well. He's supposed to fight and kill his cousins, and he's asking Krishna, like, why do I have to do this? He's really lost, and that's basically what the whole scripture is about. And Krishna, like, tells him why he has to do it and how it's his duty to do it. And I think personally for me, getting involved with my faith has helped me a lot more with my mental health, because when getting involved with my faith and my culture, because dancing as well has helped me a lot with my mental health. Because I don't know how to explain it, but it's such a euphoric feeling when you're dancing and, I don't know how to put it into words.
Like, you're in touch with your culture.
Exactly.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. It's like really, it's really great, honestly. but I just wanted to ask you about the Round Rock ISD student school health advisory council, about like your experience in how you were able to convince them to have a student on that board, on that advisory board, and how it's helped make an impact, especially in like the Round Rock ISD community.
Yeah, so it has been, that committee has been a very interesting situation, to say the least. So that is the committee that decides and recommends a lot of the things that affect students on a daily basis. So health curriculum, sex education, a lot of that goes through that committee. And, you know, even things like school nutrition and how the programs in the cafeteria are run, those also go through the committee. And we make recommendations that go to the school board, who ends up making the final decisions. And the superintendent hears those recommendations and sees what he can do from his end as well. And as part of that role, we get to meet with a lot of district officials, right? And so we get to meet with the people who oversee all school counselors in the district. We get to meet with people who oversee the school psychologists. Yes, the district does have school psychologists, but not a lot. I think the total number is 13 school psychologists for 60 campuses. It doesn't make sense, right? So I doubt either of you have ever even seen a school psychologist on campus, because they don't have the capacity. And so we get to meet with the people who oversee those things and ask about policies that are in place. So I was in a committee meeting last week, and I said, so tell me, what are school counselors doing right now about mental health and suicide prevention? Whatever it may be, I don't care if it's posters, if it's guidance lessons, whatever it is, just tell me what they're doing so I have some sort of baseline idea, and then we can make recommendations on what more needs to be done. The answer I got was, I don't know. And that was really sad, because I felt like, how can you, like, this is such a big part of it, right? Like, we think of school counselors are really the only, like, what we consider like mental health related people on campus, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of them don't even have adequate mental health training, and most of them are just academic advisors because they're overloaded, they're overburdened, right? So there's no way right now to keep them in the mental health lane, because they have so many other responsibilities. And who do you put the academic advisor responsibility on? You can't put it on the assistant principal. You can't put it on the teachers, because they are already overworked. They don't even have off periods, really. And so it's such a tricky situation, right? And so but to not even know what they're doing, that was really sad. But then the state law requires teachers to get suicide prevention training. And it recommends an 8-hour-long in-person training called Youth Mental Health First Aid. And that trains teachers and educators on how to identify signs of mental health struggles among students and what to do in those cases. And it's an intensive 8-hour-long in-person training. So that was required by state law. Round Rock ISD got an exception from the Texas Education Agency to not do that training for their educators, and to instead do a 2-hour training virtually. And when I heard that, I was like, how? First of all, you can't condense 8 hours of training into 2 hours. Second of all, if it's virtual, we already know that's a problem, right? I've done those trainings, you all have done those trainings, you press play and you walk away. There's no substance to it. So I brought that up, and I mean, district leaders just didn't want to accept that was a problem. So tomorrow I have a meeting with the superintendent, and I have a meeting with some other district leaders, because I'm going to make it abundantly clear that all of what not you all, but like them, everything that they are working on around education strategies and classroom management, none of it matters if the students are struggling. None of it matters if the students aren't there. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, I think it's even more important to have students on the School Health Advisory Council. And we're actually starting to have even more students come from across the district, because we are the ones who know best, right? We know what's happening in schools. We know what's happening to our peers. So who better to represent us? These committees are mandated by state law in every single school district. The law also says that they can have students, but no district actually ever implements that or uses that. So when I first applied to be on the board, I showed them the state law that said that students can be on it. They didn't believe me. And I showed them the law. I was like, this is what it says. I had to go to multiple people. Eventually, I had to take it all the way up to the superintendent. And the superintendent, Dr. Azaiz, he's the one who's like, yeah, Ayaan, the law says it right there. So a lot of times, the institutions are just not even used to this happening, right? And understandably, right? Like, this is never, no one's ever thought of having a student on the School Health Advisory Council. So those are the types of things that we want to increase student participation in, because that is what directly affects what's happening here in schools. And the last thing I'll say is, I also found out, I said, when is suicide prevention talked about? K through 12, whatever it is, in guidance, they said, we don't talk about it at all. It's not mentioned. And they're like, we give the teachers that 2-hour training, but they're never told to teach students about it. And that was heartbreaking. I was in tears when I heard that, because I said, how can you stop it from happening if you can't even say the word?
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah.
And I think you actually made a really big change in Round Rock ISD. I'm not sure if you know, but Round Rock ISD over the last 2 years has made a student advisory council where they bring together students from a bunch of different schools.
Voice?
Yeah. And they are working on a project right now to increase the sense of belonging within schools district-wide.
Yeah. Are you on that?
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's really good for students to get involved in it.
Yeah, that's so important.
And I think when you were talking about the 8-hour 2-hour thing, I think even 8 hours isn't enough time to encapsulate like all of the problems caused by mental health and how many implications it can cause on students and these permanent effects. And it's really heartbreaking to hear that that's even being reduced to even 2 hours. So it really tells you about like how underrepresented people with mental health problems are in the community.
Yeah.
And I had a question. So was there ever a specific moment for you? I know a huge part of your work is about advocacy. So was there like a moment where you felt like staying quiet was more dangerous than speaking up, and how that was for you?
Yeah. I mean, there's always fear with both staying quiet and saying something. I mean, it is very scary to be doing this, and especially in a time like this, and where everything is just so heated and so controversial, and you don't know what you can say, what you can't say. But I've decided I'm going to be open and honest. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm just going to be who I am, and I'm going to say what I think needs to be done. And so, like I said, I mentioned some of the things earlier, right, that, like, about what the district administrators told me when I asked them these questions. Some of them might not want me to be saying that here. Mm-hmm. But it's true. Those are things that are happening, and like you said, I could stay quiet. And honestly, that would probably be a lot easier, right, because I'm not getting anybody upset, I'm not causing any disruption. At the end of the day, I know that if I stayed quiet, something bad would have happened. I mean, the district has had so many suicides among students, and we don't talk about it, and we refuse to acknowledge it. And so it's going to keep happening if we don't say something. So that's why, yeah, it's scary to say something, but it's also scary to stay quiet, because, like, what could happen to someone I know? What could happen to someone we went to school with, right? If God forbid something like that happens, if we're not talking about it. So there are a lot of times where I'm hesitant to say things, and, you know, especially like when I go to Washington D.C. and I go to the Capitol and I talk to members of Congress about, you know, oh, you need to put money into this. I mean, we had a bill that put in $990 million into minority mental health funds, and for, like, fellowship programs to make sure that folks from the South Asian community, the African American community could go study mental health related fields and have their student debt canceled. So different programs like that. It wasn't all for that, but $990 million for similar programs. And, we didn't think that everybody in Congress would support. I mean, that's a lot of money. We didn't think that people in Congress would support it. It passed out of the House. I mean, that twice in a row, because it didn't get through the Senate, but 2 Congresses in a row, it passed out of the House. And, I mean, it proves, right, that when we go and we share our stories and we share our narrative, that's the power that we can have. And so many members of Congress have told us, like, the only reason we supported this is because you as a young person came and told us that you needed this. If some old person from a large organization had come and said, we need to do this for students, they would have been like, that's not important, we got other problems. But you yourself came with your experiences, you know what you need, you know what you've been through firsthand, right? This is a primary source, if you will, right? And so that's why they supported it. So again, it's a lot to be able to go to DC and literally within the span of 4 days have 400 meetings, right? I mean, like, with a group of people, we have 400 meetings in 4 days. I mean, that's a lot of coordinating, that's a lot of work, and most of all, it's really hard to be able to share those experiences over and over again. And so we would have rather sat at home and not done that, right? I wish every morning I could wake up and just not have to do any of this, right? And maybe someday I won't have to. That's the goal, right? Where this is not a problem anymore, where no one else is dying, where no one else is suffering alone. But we're not there yet. And that's why I think that we all need to keep talking about it. And I think there's always going to be that level of fear with anything we do. I mean, with even beyond mental health, with racial justice and gender justice and all of the other things that are happening right now, it's scary. Like I have gone to protests and there have been pepper sprayed, that protesters are getting pepper sprayed and tear gassed and all these. It's scary. And so I don't think anybody should have to put their safety at risk. And I don't think that should be what's happening. And I think we need to work with law enforcement and with institutions to make sure that, what we were talking about earlier, that if there are students who are exercising their rights, that they're safe. And so going back to your original question, yeah, it's scary, but there are ways to do it together so that it's not as scary.
And I think it's a message for the people who are watching, who are students, who are interested in making the changes, that the first step is speaking up. If you just stay put and you're kind of in fear that something bad might happen to you advocating for it, there's no point in that, because you never know what's going to happen unless you speak up for what you believe in.
Yeah.
This is like AP Psych, like what we learned group
exactly.
thing versus
we're fresh from that.
Yeah,
nice.
We just came back from that.
Yikes. I've heard brutal things about that class. Is it bad?
I
It's
love
so
the class.
easy.
You like it?
I like the class.
I've heard it's really hard.
Really?
No, Calc AB is really hard.
Oh yeah.
That's
Okay,
not even
that's some real South Asian stuff right there. Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think AP Psych is so easy.
I love AP
Yeah.
Psych.
Okay, I need to take a look.
So I was just gonna say, to wrap it up, if there was another, I feel like we've already kind of went over this, but if there's a South Asian student who feels like they aren't allowed to speak up yet, what's the first step that they should take, just briefly? What do you think that they should undergo to make their voice heard?
Reach out to me. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Everybody has my Instagram. DM me. I will always respond at Ayaan Moledina. I'm not trying to get more. I'm just literally reach out to me.
100%.
I mean, I have people reach out to me all the time, and I will respond to you super quick, and I want to help in any way possible. I will go stand outside your school and go do whatever I need to. I'm not scared of going and talking to your principal or the superintendent. I will be there with you. I don't want to do it all for you. I want to give you the resources to be strong and make a difference. So if you ever feel like your voice is being silenced or you can't get help, I'm here. And seriously though, I mean, there's always times where even I a lot of times I feel alone, and that I can't ask anybody for help. But that's never the case. That's never the case. You know, I mean, yesterday I was having a bad day and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. And I texted a school principal that I had met 6 months ago. And because that person told me that if you ever need anything, seriously, if you ever just need to say hi, reach out to me. And I don't go to that school district. We just met at a conference and we talked for an hour and we had a really good conversation about mental health. And I just shot them a text and said, hey, you know, I'm having a bad day. Just if you could send some love my way. And they did. And they sent a really nice message and it made me feel better. So there's always someone you can reach out to. And, you know, there's always going to be people that are going to try and stand in your way. There's always going to be people that are afraid to talk about this issue. There are ways to solve it, and so you just have to keep talking. You have to be willing to do that. You have to find other people your age that are willing to stand up, because it's a lot harder to turn down 10 young people than it is to turn down one young person. And so I can't emphasize enough, I'm here.
Yes.
But also find people in your school, in your community, that can help you as well. And you have to find the right partner to do it, right? And so like I mentioned earlier, you hit a roadblock and you say, okay, these leaders are not the ones that are going to help me. I'm going to turn right and I'm going to find someone else, find a different teacher, find a different counselor. There are ways to do it. And have ideas for what you want to do, right? Hey, I want to put on posters that talk about the 988 Lifeline and show like different signs of mental health struggles so that students know what to look at for their peers. And I was talking to district leadership about this, and they're like, oh yeah, all campuses have 988 posters on them. And I got lost on the way here, but I was walking through the halls and I didn't see any. I don't know if I just missed it, but I didn't see any of that.
I don't think.
I've been here for like 3 years.
Yeah, so these things, like, again, that's why student voices are so important, because they're sitting there and they think, it's not that they're lying, they genuinely think that this is happening, right? That there's posters on the wall that talk about suicide prevention. We all know that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. And so you also have to, once you find the right people, you also have to have the ideas and understand what needs to be done. And just have a list of things like this is a problem. No one knows your story better than you do.
That's so true. I think what you said about like it's harder to turn down 10 people than one.
Yeah.
Well, I just keep relating it back to AP Psych, but people are stronger in groups.
Yes. Yeah. And not only are they stronger, but they feel stronger, mm-hmm. right? Like if I'm gonna go in front of the principal and talk alone, it'll be scary. But if I go with 10 other people, not only am I going to feel less scared, but I'm going to feel like, wow, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. You know, and it, again, goes back to loneliness and isolation. It's like people care about this issue, but they also care about me. That's a wonderful feeling to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's heartwarming.
Yeah. I want everybody to feel that.
Yeah.
No one ever, especially no young person, should ever feel like they're alone. And it's a lot easier said than done, right? Like, I'm just saying, okay, no person should ever feel alone. I still feel alone all the time, right? Like, and I'm the person saying it. And so that means that we all have to rely on one another. And a lot of times what I hear from young people is like, it's not my responsibility to help that person, right? Like, that's their problem. They're going through this. I have my own stuff to deal with. I'm going to go hang out with my friends. I'm going to go deal with my own stuff. Yeah, it's not your responsibility. You're right. It's not your job. But it's the right thing to do. And there's a lot of things in this world that aren't our responsibility or aren't our job. We still do them because we know that it needs to be done. So if you have the power to help someone else, to help someone have a better day, to potentially literally help save someone's life, you best believe you should do whatever you can to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Like, I'll actively like think about it.
Yeah. It's something we all need to remind ourselves about, right? I mean, I have to remind myself every day, right? Like, this person needs to talk to me. I'm going to take an hour and a half out of my time. Maybe that'll cut into something else I'm going to do, but it's going to help them. Mm-hmm. And every person counts. Oh, one last thing before we end. The starfish story. I don't know, have y'all heard the starfish story? Okay, so it's super quick. This guy was walking along the beach, and there was a bunch of starfish along the sand that had washed up on shore and were no longer in the water. And if they're on the sand for too long, they die because they're not in water. So the man, and the beach is full of them, thousands and thousands. So the man starts picking them up and throwing them back in the ocean to try and save their lives. And another man comes up and says, "Sir, why are you doing that? You're never going to get through the entire beach. There's thousands of starfish. You're not going to be able to save them all. It doesn't matter." And the man picked up another one, and he threw it in the ocean, and he said, "It mattered to that one." Every person counts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Thank you all for tuning in to the 5th episode of Chai and Chill. I'm your host, Lakshmi Trivedi.
And I'm your host, Pranjali Kulkarni.
We are so grateful to Ayaan for allowing us to gain insight on the roles of students in activism in response to today's political climate, as well as how we can use our voices district-wide, statewide, and nationwide. As we wrap up this episode, we urge you to reflect on how you can spark change in your own community. Follow Westwood Sasa on Instagram at Westwood_Sasa to keep up with future episodes and share your own stories.
Be safe, be well.
Thank you for tuning in to this month's episode. We'll be back next month. Until then, stay kind, stay you, and stay tuned for more Chai Chats. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.